Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Daily Deuce. I'm Gary Graves from just outside lovely Louisville, Kentucky, lovely rainy Louisville, Kentucky. And in Maryland, my good friend, esteemed colleague, and all-around good dude, John Webster. How are you today, John?
Hey, Gary, doing great. We're having a rainy day here in Maryland as well. But man, I tell you what was not raining. It was sunshine all over those basketball games this weekend, the men's tournament Final Four and the women's tournament Final Four. I'm excited and ready to get talking about it, but we would be remiss if we didn't first say hey to our traffic cop, hey to our main man, John Pitt.
John Pitt, how are you, man? What happened to John?
He must have read the results on the
bracket. I'm sorry, guys. I did a classic Zoom mistake. I was on mute. I have a quick question. How do you get 20 plus offensive rebounds and lose a game like that, like we saw last night?
I'm still trying to figure that one out myself. Because
it's a compound word, guys. It's called buzz saw. That's what Carolina ran into in the second half, a buzzsaw.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. John, it's like, we've seen this so much. We talk about it a whole lot. It was obviously a tale of two halves. All the cliches you can use about college basketball, a game of runs. I mean, it was epitomized there last night. Did I think Kansas was done at halftime? A little bit, I will admit, because they just looked out of sorts. Carolina was taking it to them. And I figure if Carolina came out those first 3 or 4 minutes of the second half, maybe got it to 20, then it was a wrap then. But when you can't close them in those first few minutes of the second half, that's when the doors open for the game to change. Kansas took advantage. They became the aggressor. They took better shots. Really they stuck with what they did, but they were more aggressive going to the rack. They got something out of it. It wasn't always pretty, but just by being more aggressive than they were in the first half. And a lot of that was because Carolina wasn't letting them. But I think Carolina kind of hit a wall with that. Baycott, even before he went down late in the game with the injury, that you could kind of see he was laboring. Carolina might have hit the wall then, and that's what opened up the door, at least for Kansas to tie. What do you think?
Well, a couple things. I think more so Kansas won the game as opposed to Carolina lost the game.
I agree.
Kansas came in the second half. They made a couple of adjustments. They went with the pressure. If you think back a couple of weeks ago when Baylor was down 25 to Carolina, they went with pressure full court. Carolina struggled with it then, and they struggled again last night with it. The shots that they were getting and making in the first half, or the shots they were making Saturday night against Duke, weren't falling. There were layups that were rolling in and out. I mean, of course, yes, Gary, there were some shot selections that they could have done a better job of. But in the end, for me, I give the credit to Kansas. They won the game. It's not so much Carolina lost it. Kansas won the game. I mean, they came out in the second half. They went full court pressure. I mean, they were hitting shots. And I'm going to tell you, unsung hero, Gary. The kid that plays center for McCormick, he hit the last 4 points. Remember, Carolina was up 69-68. He hit the jump hook. The first jump hook he hit, the first one he made, keep in mind, he missed it, had to get his own rebound, and then hit it. And then it was 70-69. Then they came down again. He hit another one. So I give a lot of credit. And he was a double-double last night. I think 15 points, 15 rebounds.
Yeah.
He played really well, and that was key at the end. The guard play with Remy Martin, I mean, he got it going in the second half. I mean, they just Obaji, he played well. Yeah, they all played very, very well in the second half. Babcock for Carolina. I mean, Gary, think about this, man. I want you to think about this for a second. This kid gave 14 points and 17 rebounds on a bad ankle. What does he do if his wheel is really right and he's going full speed? He did that on a bad ankle. You know, he played really well. I mean, it's just they just couldn't close the deal, man. And to me, they have nothing to be ashamed of. You couldn't close the deal because you lost to Kansas. That's nothing to be ashamed of.
No, not at all. And you're right. Kansas did win it. And one thing that one way Kansas won it was by taking RJ and
Love
out of their comfort zone, particularly down the stretch. I mean, they hit their jumpers at times, but there were a lot of times they got forced out. They had to come in, toward the arc, maybe back out, and then come in again. They had to go to their second choice, and the final shot in particular. That was a really well contested shot. I mean, I know it was an air ball, but if you look at the replay, he's going over two outstretched arms. Kansas was not going to let him get that shot off easily. And I'm not going to say he just threw it up, but it was just one where, again, you're down to your last second. You've got to just jack it up the best way you can. And Kansas defended it as well as you can, which says a whole lot about the adjustments that Bill Self and his staff made at halftime. Because, again, while it looked bad for him, I just kept thinking, if you adjust, if you figure out how to, slow Carolina down a little bit, if you figure out how to try to work for more of your shots in near the basket, because, Baycott basically was, Baycott and Manek were just like, they were not letting anybody in. And it's one of those things, if you can't go up over them, you figure out a way to go around them. And they did. And, you pointed out McCormick that, I'm going to say for the most part that Baycott, even on a bad ankle, outplayed him. But when Kansas needed it, when McCormick had to step up, he did with those two shots. And they weren't even like, they were big shots in terms of the magnitude importance, but they were just, like I said, those little soft jumpers that you expect from big men in the lane to make when they're close in like that. I mean, it was like mano a mano with big men, and he just figured out a way to get over the longer hand, the bigger guy.
Yeah, I mean, it was, like I said, buzzsaw they ran into. The last play, I mean, I hate to even say the next thing I'm going to say because it's like it's armchair quarterbacking, but I will, and I apologize for it. The only thing I would have done differently on the last,
That's what we're here for.
The only thing I would have done differently on the last play, everybody and their mother thought Love was getting the ball. So on the inbounds pass, I would have thrown it to the middle, into the lane. It was, and I know some people say that's a difficult pass, but since they were playing so up high to guard against the three, the middle would have been open. I would have thrown it to the middle. Everybody would collapse on the guy in the middle. And then I would have had Brady Bannock swing around on the baseline and take an open three because everybody would have collapsed on the ball. And then I would have hit Brady wide open for a three.
Yeah. I mean, that's one way you could have done it. I agree with you because, again, in that situation, it was almost predictable what they were going to do. I mean, who they were probably going to go to, and all Kansas had to do was just keep them out, keep them from really trying to penetrate and make them shoot a lower percentage shot, even from three, even the way that they were hitting them.
I mean, Love was not going to get an open shot. Everybody in the building knew he was going to get it, so they were putting everybody on it. Yeah.
John, after the game, I was just wondering that, it's one thing to win one title, which Bill Self won in 2008. But now with the second title, does that kind of put him at another level? I mean, does that kind of take some pressure off of him? Because, when you talk about the elite coaches of the game, you're only talking about maybe 7 or 8 guys, including one here in Kentucky, John Calipari, who's been under fire for their first round loss to St. Peter's, and that, everybody was pointing out that those 2 teams last night, I think Kentucky beat by a combined 47 points during the regular season. But that's January and December. Last night was April, and of course, March, where it's a completely different game. But did Bill Self need that to really kind of establish himself as what I call a great coach when you win multiple titles, or was he already there and that just more or less reinforced it?
I've always thought Bill Self was a great coach anyway. Am I putting him on my Mount Rushmore of the 4 best? No. But
No.
I think he's a very good coach. I think he's an excellent coach. I think he has a great program. And I think anybody that wants to question Kansas and what Bill Self has done there year in and year out, and keep in mind, really the 2020 team was better than the team that won last night. And that was the team that got caught in the COVID and nobody played. So I think he's an excellent coach, Gary. I think, you got the naysayers that say he hasn't won enough, but how many people have won national championships that are still coaching right now? I think the number right now is like 6.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was 6 to 8. I think the one number I heard was 8 because a couple of us were going through that today. I'll probably figure out at some point before the end of this, who those other guys are. But again, I don't think he necessarily needed to win another title, but it certainly helped because again, the thing about winning championships, and I heard this in the aftermath too, that when they always talk about, Hubert Davis and his team will be back. Nobody knows that. I mean, again, if they had won last night, they would have taken advantage of their window. But you figure he's gonna have to replenish a lot of that roster at some point. Now, I'm not talking about next year. Possibly within a couple of years with his own players. He's going to have to really put his own thumb on the program. Granted, he learned under a Hall of Fame coach, Roy Williams, and that I think he showed last night, this season in particular, how well he learned all those years as the understudy. I think Carolina is really, really in good shape. Not just because of this, but I see a team where they're really buying into him as a coach, his philosophy. And again, I think he's proven whatever kind of doubters he had before the season, I think he's proven a lot of them wrong because, again, to take that team a little bit farther, went last year, a lot farther really in the grand scheme of things. But when you think about where Carolina was 2 years ago with Roy Williams, and look at where he took them last night, I really think the program is in good hands. Now he's got to find his own players to fit his system. And, again, whether they get back there next year really doesn't matter. I think, you have to look at this as you always look at this as a long-term thing. And I think he's got them headed in the right direction. But the thing about winning championships, back to Bill Self, is you've got to take advantage of the window when you have it, no matter what the sport is. And we talk about this in the NFL a lot with teams like Tampa Bay. They had a very small window with Brady. Of course, he went and reopened that window. But for him to take that team in 1 year to a Super Bowl, for Hubert Davis to take Carolina, to the final, those are impressive feats. But Bill Self has had the window. He didn't have the window in 2020, but he took it when he got it, and they now have their 4th championship.
Yeah, and keep in mind with Carolina, Gary, Hubert Davis, kudos to him. He did a very good job this year. Absolutely great job.
Mm.
And he's got a kid that didn't play. I think his name is Garcia. He transferred in from Marquette. He'll be back next year. That's a big man. And then also he has a kid, I think he played at Paul VI, has a knee injury named Harris. He's going to play next year. So you got that. And then keep in mind, Walker Kessler, who played and started Auburn, was at Carolina. That's a big loss for Carolina. And look what they still did without the three of them. You know, hey, man, my hat's off to him. He's got a good thing. I think he'll continue to get good players. And you'll know more in another year or two when he has his whole foot stamp, handprint on the team. So I think he'll do a good job. But back to your original question, Bill Self, excellent coach. No doubt in my mind. No doubt in my mind.
Yeah. And I think the monkey is off his back in a sense, because like I said, it's just like say with Jay Wright at Villanova. It's one thing to win one championship, but he won 2 in 3 years. And, again, he played in position for one on Saturday before Kansas took it to him. And before we move on, let's talk about that Duke Carolina game on Saturday. I mean, where does that rank in terms of like really among the greatest games ever? And I'm not talking about the place. I'm just talking about could we mention that in that discussion, John?
The Carolina Duke game lived up to its hype. It was a really good game. 18 lead changes. It came down to a shot at the end by Caleb Love. I mean, you couldn't have scripted a better game. Well, that depends on who you ask. If you ask the Duke fans or you ask the Carolina fans. But I mean, it was a great game. I did not see Duke losing that. I was wrong. Carolina beat them. They ruined 2 farewell parties for Coach K. I didn't see that coming, but absolutely wonderful game. Great game.
Yeah. I mean, I think that one probably is in the top 3 or 4 in terms of, really the best games, because you look at it, it's like no team, I think, I don't think any team led by more than 4 for about the last 7 minutes of that game. And the biggest lead overall was like 7 points. And again, it's just so how quickly Carolina turned that game around and got it in their favor. And then it just became, just a slugfest back and forth. I mean, even from a rivalry standpoint, that nobody saw that one coming. That one really, really, really took the cake. Okay, let's move on to the women's side. We're a couple of days removed from South Carolina establishing its supremacy and really kind of handily over a good UConn team. For me, the way that I've looked at this is Dawn Staley, when I say she needed that championship, I'm going to say she really wanted that championship, because let's go back to 2020 again. COVID wiped out a shot at a title with a team that really was more loaded than this one. And Dawn Staley, I think, has said that might have been her better team, if not her best team. And that's saying something, considering she had already had a championship at this point. But Carolina just was dominant. I mean, they took Louisville completely out of their game. And they took them out of their game almost from the beginning. I know that Louisville, they were down big, and then they came back. They were ahead briefly. But once they put those arms out and up, there was nothing that Louisville can do. And they really used that to their advantage against UConn. Destiny Henderson was, there's no unsung about her, because, I mean, she's been doing it all year. She's been doing it in her career. But if there was ever a player to steal some of the spotlight away from Aaliyah Boston, it was her.
Yeah. I mean, South Carolina is just a great team. And I'm going to tell you something for me, man. And it's just me, Gary. But when I watch South Carolina play, I get a tear in my eye, because it takes me back to the 80s with Coach Thompson and Georgetown, because they, in my opinion, they play the same type of fierce defense. I mean, it is relentless. As soon as you come on the court, you can't breathe, because they're right there on you. I saw UConn on Sunday night make mistakes that normally UConn teams do not make. Throwing the ball away, not being able to handle the press in a correct manner, and hey, flat out, South Carolina was the better team. You can't put it any other way. I think Gino Auriemma said it best. He went into this game knowing that he needed to have a little bit of luck on his side to pull this out. He said he'd had UConn teams like South Carolina where they went in and they were the dominant team. He knew he was the underdog and had to have some luck, just like he had to have some luck on Friday night when they beat Stanford. Stanford had picked the worst night of the year to have their worst shooting night. And you didn't have the fortunate situation in UConn's eyes of South Carolina having a bad night on defense. South Carolina was on all four cylinders the whole night on UConn. I mean, the closest UConn got was 6 in the second half. And then South Carolina ran off another 6 points. And before you know it, it's a 12-point lead right back again. So, Dawn Staley does a wonderful job with South Carolina. She's another one that I think is a very, very good coach, an excellent coach, and she has an excellent program. Aaliyah Boston is just flat out, she's the player of the year for the women. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. She is the best player as far as I'm concerned. And Destiny Henderson, that's a floor general right there. She runs the show and she gets it done. So South Carolina, great team.
Yeah. Thing about Dawn Staley, and the reason why when I say she needed that, because for a lot of teams from 2 years ago, there will always be questions about what might have been. That was a very strong South Carolina. What Sunday night really reinforced for me was just how great Dawn Staley is, period, when it comes to basketball. She's already in the Hall of Fame as a player. That title might really help establish her credentials to be re-enshrined as a coach, because you figure you've got another year out of at least another year out of Boston, unless I've missed something. She's got another good class coming in, and obviously they're not going anywhere. I think those 3 of those teams that you saw in the Final Four, you will probably see them back next year. And I'm not sure where Louisville will regroup. And I know that might, bring a little bit of scrutiny upon me. But again, it's like, because of what Louisville loses, and how do you replenish that? How do you replace that and getting back there? But again, that Final Four pretty much was the best 4 teams. But Stanford, UConn, and the champ South Carolina, though they are the cream of the crop, and it wouldn't be surprising to see them there next year, maybe with LSU, depending on what Mulkey can do down there at LSU. And she did a pretty good job of turning that program around in year 1 too. Don't forget Baylor.
Well, I agree with you, Gary, and we'll see what happens next year. We got the blueprint for another fine season for the women and the men. So I look forward to it.
Yeah. Okay, so John, let's see. We've got a little smorgasbord here, but we could talk about NBA, we could talk about baseball, we could talk about the Masters. Pick one.
Whichever one you want to go with, Gary. I'm fine either way. What you want to hear?
All right, let's talk the playoffs, because we've done this so many weeks now. We might as well continue it again in terms of talking about the Lakers and where they shake out, Golden State and where they'll shake out. But let's focus on the Lakers. I mean, do you think the Lakers will make it?
Make what? The playoffs?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Let me get myself together after you ask that question. No.
Okay. I don't think so either, but I wanted to hear you say it.
I just don't. Too many problems, man. I mean, tonight they're playing. LeBron has been ruled out. He's not playing tonight. They're in the midst of a 6-game losing streak. Anthony Davis has been playing, but I told Dante Sunday was the first time I sat down and watched them very closely, the Lakers. They were playing the Nuggets, and I watched them very closely. Their defense is non-existent. They have no real strong perimeter game other than Carmelo Anthony. Davis would be a perimeter game, but if you put Davis out on the perimeter, who's hitting the boards and getting the rebounds? Westbrook is struggling right now. I feel bad for him. He's going through he's going through it. I can't put it any other way. So I don't see him making it, Gary. And I guess next year you got to look at what you're going to do with the roster. I've already heard one name being mentioned. They're putting Vogel's not going to be back next year.
No.
So one of the names I'm hearing is Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers is possibly coming there. I don't care if you bring Phil Jackson out of retirement or bring Red R back to this earth. That roster that you have right now with the Lakers, they're never going to win. It's not going to fit. It will not work. You have to get a different setup. And if you want LeBron James to handle the ball 85% of the time, then you really don't need Westbrook. So when Westbrook came there, in my opinion, I think there should have been an adjustment made with how much time Westbrook was going to have the ball as opposed to LeBron. LeBron can play any position on the court, but he's really wonderful with the ball in his hands. I think he's more similar to a Magic Johnson than a Michael Jordan. But with that being said, if you have Westbrook there and Westbrook is starting, and Westbrook's best play is when he has the ball in his hand, not playing off the ball, what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do? And the way it looks right now, you traded your three best players to the Bullets. I'm sorry, the Wizards. You traded Kuzma, Caldwell Pope, and Harrell to the Wizards. Those are your three best players. Kuzma's having a career year. Caldwell Pope's doing well. Harrell just got traded at the trade deadline. I can't remember who he went to.
I think he went to Carolina. I'm sorry, Charlotte, rather.
Yeah, but back to your original question. No, I don't see them making the playoffs. It's no way. Who else? Did I call? Pat Riley could come back there and they wouldn't win. I mean, did I leave any coach out that's an all-time great coach? They would change it.
You get Westhead, Bill Sharman. I mean, look. I mean, if you want to, you can go all the way back to their Minneapolis days. But yeah, it's not gonna do anything with that roster. Here's my thing. And I feel like if the Lakers are going to improve going forward, somebody in that organization has got to tell LeBron James on his personnel decisions. If he's going to handle the ball most of the time, let him do that. Do not let him pick out the roster. As far as Frank Vogel getting fired, to me, I would feel like it's not his fault because he was just playing with the roster that LeBron dealt him, and it handcuffed him almost from the start when he brought in Westbrook. I'm like you. I kind of feel sorry for Westbrook for how he's playing right now. He's catching a lot of blame for how they're playing. Some of it's deserved, some games, some of it's not. Some of it's unfair. But again, it is what it is with the Lakers. But it lies solely at LeBron James's feet because, this is his legacy. This year's team will be part of his legacy. A team that's going to miss the playoffs, that's got a whole lot of talent, but they've got too many similar parts that can't play together at the same time.
Hey, Gary, I'm going to tell you something. When Jenny Buss calls Frank Vogel into the office to let him go, if I was Frank Vogel, I would give her a hug and kiss her on the cheek and say, thank you so much. I'm out, because he's being blamed for it, and it's not.
It's not his fault.
It's not his fault. You got a roster that it doesn't work. I mean, before the season, I was hopeful. I thought it would work, but unless you're going to make the adjustments in yourself so others can get and fit in, it won't work. And let's remember, I hate putting it like this, but LeBron James gave the go-ahead and the okay to sign Westbrook. And if that's who you want, that's fine. But then you need to adjust as well to make sure that he has a comfortable way of being able to play in your system. That's all I'll say.
John, you've got the last word on that. I couldn't have said it better. Folks, we are out of time. There is so much more we could have talked about, but we'll get to it next week. Watch the Masters. Welcome in baseball season. We'll see you again next week. John, have a good one. Big John Pitt, thank you so much for what you do. Tell your friends, tell your family what we've got here, because it's real special and it's a lot of fun. Take it, John.
Hey, man, it's been another great week of sports. It's been fast moving. I've enjoyed it. It's great to be here and talk it with you and Pitt. Great time. One thing I want y'all to do this week, on top of watching sports and on top of having a good time and having some fun, root hard for the Baltimore Orioles. They're going to start strong this year. We're going to make a run. Take care, everybody. Have a good week.